In this video, I'm going to give you a whirlwind tour of Unity. I'm just going to show you some of the basic features of Unity and how to get a real quick start into making games. I just want to show you guys how easy it is to make a game with Unity and how flexible it is for creating far more complicated things. Alright, so the version that we're going to be working with in this video is 3.3, which is the latest version at the moment. But you shouldn't encounter too many differences if you're a little bit behind that. What I want you to do is open up Unity and start up a new project. So you should find File, New Project, and this is going to give you a little window here. This is the absolute path of your project, and all I want you to do is change this last part here. I'm going to call this Demo Project. And this is the folder where all of our resources and files are going to be stored on our computer. Down here you can see there's a whole collection of different packages. These are basically prefabricated collections of scripts, models, all sorts of things that can get you going real fast. There's two of them here that I want to include in this project. The first one will be the character controller, and the second one will be the skyboxes. The character controller contains a couple of prefabricated objects that will allow us to start moving around in our scene really fast without a whole lot of effort. And the skyboxes is just going to let us see a pretty sky really fast, so we don't have to have a boring background. Alright, once you've got that, you're going to hit create, and it'll take a little bit to load up. So this is the default appearance for an empty project. If you don't have a grid in this particular window, you're going to want to go up to this button here and click it. That will turn the grid on and off. Right. This is your scene window. This will contain all of the visual elements of your game. It allows you to place your objects in certain locations, and it also will let you preview your game when you're running it. You can see up here there's another tab for game. When you have stuff in here, this is going to be the interactive part of the Unity development environment. Alright, so over here you can see there's a couple of windows. This is where most of the hard work gets done. Down here, this is the project window. This contains all of the assets that you have in your project. In this case, we have both of the packages that we included at the very start, the character controllers and the skyboxes. We'll be adding in some of our own, and we'll be using some of these later on. Up here we have the hierarchy window, which right now it's only got the camera in it. You can see that's right here on the screen. Nothing else in here, just kind of empty. But once we clicked on this, you noticed that over here, the inspector window filled with a whole lot of different properties. The inspector window allows you to edit, modify, and add additional properties to any of your objects. And you know, they're fairly self-explanatory so long as you know the terminology. And you can fiddle with those really easily, just little drag sliders or changing the values here. It's a really simple interface, and it definitely allows you to experiment just by tweaking stuff. This is the default layout with the scene window over here and these windows stuck on the right side. However, if you want to move them around, there's a couple of different preset layouts for you. If you go to the window, go to layouts, and you can pick one of these depending on whichever one fits your fancy. Like for example, the wide view will do this, which can work a little bit better on certain monitors. But for this example, I'm going to stick with the tall layout, which is the default layout. And as you noticed, when I switched layouts, that turned off the grid, so I'm going to turn it back on. Okay. Now, what I want you to do first is add an object to the scene. In this case, we're going to start with the ground, since ground is a pretty reasonable place to start at. Up here at the top, there's this game object drop down. This has a bunch of useful objects that you can just pull out and create. In this case, I want to pick the plane. That'll add in a basic little quad here in our scene. Now, fortunately, this actually ended up at a position of 0, 0, 0. That doesn't always happen, but it's pretty important. If yours ended up at a position anywhere else, make sure that that is 0 for each item. Now, you can also see over here in the hierarchy window that a new object is there, and that's our plane. Normally, we want to give this a different name so that we can distinguish between different objects, because once we start getting with more complicated scenes, names are very important for picking out items in the hierarchy. So if you go over here to the inspector, change this plane, I'm going to call this ground instead. Okay, you can see that updated over here. Now, I'm going to show you a couple of camera controls right here. The first one, when you right-click in this window, that allows you to pull your view around like this. Okay, now that's really useful. Also, if you've played first-person shooters, then you should be very comfortable with the movement scheme. If you hold right-click so that you're doing this, you can then use the keys WASD for movement. So W for forward, A for strafing left, D for strafing right, and S for backwards. You can also hold down Shift while pressing any of those keys, and that increases the speed of your movement. Okay. Now that can be nice, but there's a couple of other movement keys which make browsing around in Unity really, really nice. The first one allows you to focus on the selected object. All you have to do is have an object selected, which you can just left-click on it in the scene window here, and then you can press F. That will automatically zoom to make sure that the object is centered in your screen. And once you have that, you can scroll wheel in and out to get a better view of it, and you can also hold down the Alt key and then left mouse around in kind of an arc rotation, which can be very useful for making sure that an object is in a correct position. So once again, you have right-click, WASD for movement, Shift for additional speed. You have F for focus, the scroll wheel for zooming in, and Alt plus left mouse button for rotating around your objects. Now, if you want to move an object around in your scene instead of just your camera, you notice we have these great big arrow widgets here. Right? Obviously, that's pretty simple. You can figure out what they're doing. If you drag on them, it'll move the object around in that particular direction. You can see there that it locks it specifically to that one axis when you're moving it around, which can be very handy. Also, if you click on the square there, that allows you to move it around parallel to the camera. So that can be a little bit dangerous at times, but I'm going to set this back to 0 again. 0, 0, 0. So right now this is in the translation widget. There's 3 other different widgets. You can see them up here on the top left corner of the screen. Default, we have translation. If we change this one, we then get rotation here, which allows us to rotate our plane however much we please in whatever direction. Alright, see that? Again, I'm going to switch this back to 0. Okay. We also have the scaling widget, which allows us to change the size of our plane. I'm going to make it a little bit long right here, just to kind of give it a little corridory feel. Maybe not necessarily, but okay. So now that we've got our plane in here, it's roughly the shape that I want. I can add a player into this scene and walk around in it. It's really quite trivial to do. If you go down here to our standard assets again, I'm going to expand the character controllers, and I'm going to take this third-person controller. I'm going to drag it into the scene. Click and drag, and you can see there that it's put it kind of halfway into the ground. I want to take this and move it up a bit. So I'm going to go up to my movement widget, and I'm going to pull this up here, just so that his feet are right above the ground. Okay, so this is our prefabricated object. You can see over here that it's got a lot of properties already on it. Okay, so it's got a lot of stuff done for us. Now, if you're making a real complicated game, you will probably want to go and make your own character controller. But for now, this one works great. Now again, I'm going to change the name of this so that it fits a little bit better what we're going to be using it as. So I'm going to call this the player. Okay. Now also, another thing that I'm going to do here, and this one's already set for me, but the tag should be the player tag. Now if yours is not set to that, it should be for later on. This allows us to do some scripting events with our player. Okay. So once you've got this guy in here, you can actually click this play button, and that'll give us this right here. You can see he's got some animation. If we use the WASD keys, he can walk around in the environment a little bit. He animates. He can also jump. So we've got a full set of features here already. And if we walk off the edge, he'll fall. Okay. So once you're finished working with this, you can hit the play button again, and that will return back to where we were. Now, this is something mildly important that you want to remember. If you are playing the game and you make any changes in the hierarchy, in the inspector, anything like that, it's going to go away as soon as you stop it. I recommend that you try changing some of the values over here just to see how they affect the player and the behavior. For example, the jump height could be particularly useful depending on what type of game that you're going to be creating. Now, you may have noticed when you were in-game, the lighting was very different. The character looked very, very flat. Now, in order to change that, what we're going to want to do is add in a light object so that we have a light source in this environment. So what I want you to do, go over to Game Object again, create Other, and there should be a point light. Right. Once you've got that in there, you can't tell, but this is a little bit behind everything, underneath the environment. So this is a little bit more like what it looked like, but that's because the light is being blocked. If we take this and pull this up here, right, then the stuff looks a little bit more interesting. I'm going to center this a little bit more on the ground so that we get a little bit more interesting there. Okay, and you can also see this radius here. If you click on any of these points, you should be able to drag the size of the radius around so you can change how much area the light influences. And now when you run it, your character should look a little bit more interesting. You can see the wrinkles on his clothing a little better now.